So here's a question to start us off. What if marriage wasn't really about romance or even sexual intimacy, but about a totally different kind of partnership? Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you send us, pull out the key knowledge, and help you get genuinely well informed. Today we're doing a fascinating deep dive into something called friendship marriage in Japan. We've got an article looking at one couple's experience, Satsuki and Minato, plus insights from a counseling agency and a family sociologist. Our mission: to unpack what this really is, why people choose it, how it actually works day to day, and what it might mean for how we think about family and partnership more broadly. Get ready for some, well, potentially surprising stuff that might challenge your assumptions.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept. So basically, friendship marriage is a formal legal marriage, but the key difference is it's agreed upon without sexual intercourse. And this couple, Satsuki and Minato, they're in their 30s from the Chugoku region in Japan. They entered this arrangement back in 2021. And what's quite striking is that, 3.5 years later, they say their relationship is strong. They even had a child together in 2023, conceived without sexual contact using a method kind of like infertility treatment.
That's remarkable, especially when you hear that when they first met, they both apparently said the other was, quote, not my type.
So how on earth do you go from not my type to building this kind of life together? Let's maybe get into their individual stories first. Satsuki.
Right. Satsuki's journey is quite revealing. She realized back in middle school that she was attracted to women, and her preference was for sexual contact only with same-sex partners she knew really deeply. But at the same time, she was feeling, significant pressure from her mother about getting married, having kids, that classic pressure. Yeah, that pressure sounds very familiar, regardless of orientation. So what was the catalyst for her? How did she find this alternative path?
Well, a big turning point seems to have been a Japanese TV drama from 2016, The Full-Time Wife Escapist. In the show, the main characters have this sort of contractual, non-romantic marriage. And seeing that really sparked something for Satsuki. It made her think, okay, maybe marriage doesn't have to be about romantic love or sex. That led her eventually to discover the whole idea of friendship marriage.
Hmm. Discovering that possibility must have been huge for her. The article mentions she felt this profound relief, this comfort in being close to a man like Minato without being seen as a sexual object. What does that tell us?
It says a lot, I think. It really points to that often unspoken assumption that closeness between men and women must have a romantic or sexual undercurrent. Her relief kind of highlights this need for companionship, for partnership that can exist completely separately from those expectations. It opened up a different way to connect.
Absolutely. And then you have Minato's story, which is different again. He's romantically interested in women, but his sexual desire is only for men.
Right.
So his past relationships with women didn't work out because of that dynamic. Traditional romance just wasn't sustainable for him.
Exactly. And he was someone who actually preferred solitude, wasn't initially interested in marriage at all. But then, similar to Satsuki, external factors came into play. Around his 30th birthday, his father, who apparently hadn't interfered much before, suddenly expressed this strong wish for grandchildren.
Ah, the grandchild pressure.
Yep. And that nudge from his dad was what pushed Minato to actually start considering friendship marriage as, well, a practical solution, a way to balance everything.
Okay, so they both arrive at this idea from very different places, driven by quite unique personal circumstances and pressures. The big question then is, how did they actually find each other? And how did they build this very specific foundation, especially starting from not my type?
It was quite pragmatic, really. They met in 2019, found each other on an internet bulletin board specifically for people seeking friendship marriages.
Okay.
Satsuki saw Minato's post, sent him an email. They messaged back and forth for about half a month, then met for dinner.
That first dinner
Mm-hmm.
sounds less like a typical date and more like a compatibility assessment. What did they talk about?
Definitely more of an assessment. They got straight to the core stuff. Why do you want to get married? Do you want kids? How do you feel about living together? And they found they actually clicked on a lot of those fundamental values. Plus, they bonded over feeling that pressure from their parents.
Ah, that shared understanding.
Yeah, that was key. So just 6 months after meeting, they agreed to marry. They involved their parents, though maybe not with the full details, as we'll see, lived together for a few months as a trial run,
Right.
and then officially registered their marriage in November 2021.
And then the detail about having their child in 2023 using the syringe method, it really underscores their unique approach.
It does. It's where sperm is inserted using a syringe, similar to some fertility treatments.
And they both just describe the child as cute. Simple as that. What does that commitment to parenthood in this way Tell us about their definition of family.
I think it shows that for them, family isn't tied to the conventional package of romance and sex. Their shared desire for a child and the clear affection they have, it demonstrates that a loving, functional family can be built on a different foundation. It really pushes us to think about what makes a family, doesn't it? It's not necessarily the starting point.
It really does. And their daily life, it sounds like it actively reinforces that separation from conventional intimacy. It's quite structured, isn't it?
Very structured. Separate bedrooms, totally separate finances that really emphasizes their individual autonomy within the partnership. The child sleeps in Minato's room. He handles the tuck-in duty.
Huh.
They share schedules, apparently, but don't pry into the details of where the other person is going. And importantly, neither has other partners outside the marriage.
And that detail about the two-seater sofa, taking turns to avoid even casual touching, that's a very clear boundary.
It is. But the article stresses they're not, cold or distant. They enjoy family time, go on outings, socialize with friends together.
So it's not about hostility.
Not at all. It's more about focusing on the practical partnership, shared household duties, childcare without sort of excessive emotional interference or expectation.
How do they actually describe each other? Those descriptions were quite striking.
They really were. Minato apparently sees it as two individual happinesses rather than one family happiness. A bit philosophical. And Satsuki describes Minato as like a cousin who isn't too close. Familiar, comfortable, but not intense.
Familial, but with distance.
Right. And Minato calls Satsuki a comrade in arms with whom to live life.
Comrade in arms. That's powerful. It implies a real team effort, a strategic alliance almost. What advantages do they actually see in setting things up this way?
Well, Minato points out that they avoid the conflicts that can come from unreciprocated romantic or sexual feelings simply because those aren't expected in the first place.
Takes that whole layer of potential drama off the table.
Pretty much. And Satsuki makes an interesting point, too. She says that because romantic love isn't the driving force, things like empathy and compromise become even more crucial. They have to consciously work at understanding each other without passion acting as a sort of emotional lubricant, maybe?
So it demands a more deliberate kind of connection.
Potentially, yes. And one really crucial detail. They haven't actually told their parents the specifics. The parents just know they're married.
Okay, so they're navigating that external perception carefully. Now, this is Satsuki and Minato's story, which is fascinating in itself. But is this just them? Or is friendship marriage becoming like a wider phenomenon in Japan?
It definitely seems to be part of a larger trend. There's a counseling agency in Tokyo called Colors, founded in 2015, specifically for friendship marriage, and their numbers are quite telling. By April 2025, they'd matched 324 couples.
Wow, 324 couples.
Yeah, and most of those couples wanted children and planned to live together, so it's not just an abstract idea, it's a structured path people are actively taking.
And who exactly is seeking these arrangements through Colors? The demographics are quite specific, aren't they?
They are, and quite revealing. The agency reports that roughly 80% of the men using their service are sexually attracted to other men. So, gay men.
80%, okay.
And for women, it's even more striking. Over 90% identify as asexual, meaning they don't experience sexual attraction to others.
Over 90% asexual women. That's not what I would have necessarily predicted.
Exactly. Misato Nakamura, who runs Colors, said she initially thought it would mostly be gay men and lesbians. But the reality, particularly for women, was very different. It really highlights the diversity of reasons and identities involved, even if there are clear trends.
So it's clearly linked to sexual orientation for many, but not exclusively. What other, maybe more universal reasons are driving people towards this?
Nakamura points out that many underlying motivations are things lots of people can relate to. Wanting a life partner, someone to share life with, desiring children, or even just wanting to satisfy parental or societal expectations around marriage to reassure their families.
Right.
Her goal, she says, is basically to offer a real choice for people who, for whatever reason, can't or don't want a traditional romantic or sexual relationship with someone of the opposite sex.
Okay, this makes sense. So let's bring in the academic view. Professor Hiroyuki Kubota, the family sociologist.
Yeah.
How does he explain the societal context for this in Japan?
Professor Kubota really zeroes in on the underlying societal pressure. He talks about this deeply ingrained idea in Japan that you're not really considered a full-fledged adult until you're married and have children.
That's intense pressure.
It is. And it pushes people towards marriage sometimes, regardless of whether the traditional model actually fits their identity or desires.
And when you combine that pressure with the fact that same-sex marriage isn't legally recognized nationally in Japan, it creates a complex situation for LGBTQ plus individuals.
Mm.
How does friendship marriage fit into that picture? Is it more than just a choice?
Professor Kubota puts it quite starkly. He suggests that for some sexual minorities, friendship marriage becomes a kind of last resort or even a survival strategy.
Survival strategy.
Yeah. Because same-sex marriage lacks legal standing, friendship marriage offers a way to get legal recognition as a couple, gain societal approval, which is huge in a culture valuing marriage, and access things like Social Security benefits as a family unit.
So it's a way to navigate the system, essentially.
Exactly. It allows them to meet societal expectations while maintaining their integrity, in a way.
That's a really pragmatic view.
Hmm.
But Professor Kubota also makes this other comparison, looking at conventional marriages.
Hmm.
What was his point there?
It's a really insightful point. He observes that many initially romantic marriages naturally evolve over time. Often, the focus shifts primarily to co-parenting, running a household, just living life together. Many become sexless,
Yeah, it happens.
but they're still considered strong, valid family units. So Kubota asks if that's a common endpoint for romantic marriages. Why should there be an issue with couples who decide to start their marriage from that place of partnership, as partners to live life together right from the beginning?
That's a fantastic question. It really cuts to the core, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If the outcome we value is a stable, supportive family.
Does the initial basis, romantic passion versus platonic partnership, ultimately define its success or validity? It makes you think.
It absolutely does. So wrapping this up, what are the main takeaways here? We've looked deep into friendship marriage, seeing the personal stories like Satsuki and Minato's, driven by societal norms, individual identities, their very practical daily life with clear boundaries, but real companionship. And we've touched on the bigger picture, how it can be a vital strategy for some, and how it fundamentally questions our assumptions about family.
Yeah, and it leaves us with that big question. If a child's well-being and the family's happiness are paramount, and if many normal marriages shift towards pragmatic partnership anyway, then what really makes a marriage successful or fulfilling today?
Maybe it's less about the type of intimacy, romantic or otherwise, and more about that shared commitment. Mutual support, common goals, creating a loving home. It definitely shows there are so many ways for human connection and family structures to work, to thrive. Really makes you wonder, what other forms of partnership might we see emerge as society keeps evolving? What do you think is the most thought-provoking part of all this?